Everybody, and welcome back to Aamsuntitledpodcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. I recently started this podcast. I think it's coming up to just over 2 months now since I've started, and I'm really enjoying this actually a lot more than I thought I was going to. I've decided that I'm going to carry on, which is weird because I didn't think that this would be something that I genuinely enjoy. But there's more about me. Like, if you don't really know much about me, I'm not going to sit here and give you an explanation. If you listen to the first episode of my podcast, there's a lot more about me in that episode, why I started the podcast, that sort of thing, who I am, what I do, that sort of thing. So in today's episode, we're on the last book in the first 5 books of the Percy Jackson book series, and I'm really sad. Like, it's coming to an end. I've really enjoyed it. I finished reading the book, I want to say it was last Thursday or Friday, I can't remember. And I basically spent few hours thinking about which one was my favorite, why, and I will talk about that more when I get towards the end of this book. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the first 5 chapters in The Last Olympian. This review has to be split into 5 parts because, as you may already know if you've read the books, and if you haven't, read them, they're great. There's a lot that goes down in this book. Like, if you thought like Battle of the Labyrinth was a lot, this book is like there's something going on all the time. Like, there's never like a dull moment in this book. Like, the stakes are high throughout the book, is what I'm trying to say. So I've decided that the best way to do this was to split it up into 5 parts, and then I can talk about everything in grave detail, as I like to do. um, and yeah, I don't have to worry about the time as much because I sort of calculated how long my Battle of the Labyrinth review would have been if I had like done it in one sitting, and it was about, I think each episode was 30 to 40 minutes. So like we're looking at 2.5 hours. And I don't think anybody's got 2.5 hours in the time of day to listen to me. So I thought that the best way to do this would be to split it up. So if you haven't heard my reviews of the other 4 books, please go and check them out. The first 3, there are only 2 parts to them, although those reviews are slightly long. I think they're about between 40 and 45 minutes from what I can remember. But yeah, so please listen to those first because obviously there's spoilers throughout. So there's no point in you listening to this if you don't know what's going on in the first few books. So I recommend listening to those first and then coming back. And I've rambled on for nearly 3 minutes about absolutely nothing to do with what's happening in the book. So let's just get on with it. So chapter 1 is I Go Cruising with Explosives. So the chapter opens with a Pegasus landing on the hood of Paul's car, but Rick gives you a little bit of a flashback as to what happens before that moment. So it opens up with Paul taking Percy and Rachel to the beach so that Percy can practice driving. He's old enough to finally get his driver's license. And, Percy sort of opens up to Rachel about his father being, Poseidon. And it's revealed that Rachel has actually invited him to a family vacation. So with her and her mom and dad, I think. I don't think she's got any siblings. And, he says, I'd love to come, but, like, I can't because the war. Yeah, you're right. You're not going nowhere, mate. You stay here. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry. I get, like, a little bit of a Rachel hate phase. Guys, I get it. Like, I get it. Like, she's trying to shoot a shot, but can't. Like, I'm just a diehard Percy Jackson fan. I'm just like, this person is coming in between, and I don't like it. That's to Rachel. Like, she's a great character. It's just, I just don't like her intervening in the Percy Beth relationship, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's move on. Before you guys attack me, let's move on. And Rachel tells him that her dad wants to go to this finishing school. It's like finishing school for high class society ladies, I think, something like that. I can't remember what it's called. Actually, I should have written that down. What an idiot. Why didn't I write that down? Stupid, honestly. Oh, anyway, and Rachel throughout the chapter is making it quite obvious that she likes Percy. And, she said something along the lines of what, like, she asked Percy, like, a question, and she's like, oh, there's this girl who likes this boy, and he's not catching the hints. So in that instance, what would you do? So, and Percy is somebody who is like a mythic hero, very good at defeating monsters, yet can't take the hint when a girl is completely into him. Like, it's so obvious. Like, I was reading it and I was like cringing. I was like, how does he not know? Like, at this point, how does he not know? Maybe boys are a little bit more dense than girls. I don't know. Well, people say that he's dumb. Percy's not dumb. He's just dense, I think, and he's very oblivious, and that gets on my nerves a little bit sometimes because I'm just like, boy, she's throwing herself at you, and you can't see it. But yeah, whatever. Let's move on. And Blackjack appears, so we're flashing back to the point where the Pegasus lands on the hood of Paul's car with Charles. So Charles is, I think he's from the Hephaestus cabin. I'm pretty sure he's the head counselor of the Hephaestus cabin. Remember him, very important throughout this book. But he's a very good character as well, actually. I really like his character. And he says that, I need to take you home, like, because the war is about to start, basically. And then, I want to say this. Do I really want to say it? I have to say it. It's part of the book. I have to say it. So Rachel basically kisses him. Now, this is what pisses me off because she knows from the Battle of the Labyrinth book, like we talked about this. Maybe it was in the last few chapters because obviously her and Annabeth was constantly clashing heads. And like she knows how Annabeth feels about him. And she still kisses him anyway. And that is what pissed me off. I was like, right, no. Because if I knew that my friend had feelings for a guy, regardless of how I felt about him, I would not make a move. Because I'm like, no, that's just, to me, it's morally wrong. Like, you guys feel free to disagree with me, but I think it's wrong. And like, I see a lot of edits on like TikTok and like on my Instagram page, I get a lot of reels where it's like, "But Rachel was only shooting her shot." Okay, right, that's fine. Shooting your shot. But when you know that he obviously likes Annabeth and that Annabeth obviously likes him. Actually, I don't think that Percy knows at this point that he likes Annabeth. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in his mind. Like, even though the books are written from his perspective, it's like sometimes I really do struggle to see where he's coming from. And I just think it was a little bit selfish. Like, no, I don't know. No, I don't know, guys. I don't think I could do it, is what I'm trying to say. Like, yeah. Charles says that, I don't think you want me mentioning that little scene to Annabeth, and Percy's like, oh, gods, no, please don't tell her. Already hates Rachel. And if you tell her that, it's just going to be even worse. Yeah, that bit was just like I was like, honestly pissed off. Like when I was reading the book, I like slammed the book shut. I was like, oh my god. I was like, this is too much. This is too much for me. I can't take it. And as they're flying over the sea, they see the Princess Andromeda. That's obviously where Kronos' army and Luke is. So Percy gets off Blackjack and he sends him back to camp to be safe. So basically, Charles and him have this plan that if they blow the ship up with Kronos' army, that will stop the enemy threat. Which is a good plan, but it just seems too easy. Like, you can't just, I don't think it'd ever be that easy. But anyway, so basically, him and Charles are spreading Greek fire all across the ship. And I see some monsters coming, and Percy says, I'll cause a distraction so that you can carry on, basically. And a giant crab appears. Now, this is the bit where I started laughing. Now, I don't know why I was laughing. Sorry, I had to cough there. I didn't want to put that on the recording. I'm so sorry. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, the giant crab. So then I don't know why I started laughing. I think it's because the idea of having to fight a crab monster just kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know. I have this thing where sometimes when I'm in situations and I don't know how to respond, I don't know if anybody else has this, but like I tend to start laughing. And it's not like me being insensitive, it's just like my brain hasn't caught up with a way to react. So I just start laughing. And I've done it in serious situations as well, and it's not good. But anyway, I'll talk about those stories another time because I don't want you guys to think I'm horrible. I'm not trying to be horrible on purpose, it just happens. Anyway, back to the giant crab. So basically, Percy manages to defeat it, and he ends up in front of Luke, and he says that I've been expecting you to come. In other words, Luke knows that Percy was planning this attack. So that's not good. Already that's not good. He's done what Luke expected him to do. Now, I think this is another thing that's very important because I think the reason why Luke Actually, no, not Luke, but Percy. I feel like Percy can't beat Luke because, according to Luke, he is very predictable. Like, even when they're sword fighting, whether it was in the second book or if it was in the first one, Percy, remember, he's got that fatal flaw where he would do anything for his friend. And at one point, Luke was his friend. And I think that he's accepted that Luke has betrayed him, but he knows he cannot beat him because to Luke, he already knows everything about Percy. Like, he's taught him that swordsmanship, and I think that is a really clever thing that Rick has done. Now, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but that's what I feel like it is. I don't know. Somebody tell me, what is it supposed to be? And Percy tries using these water abilities to defeat him, but when demigods use their powers, they lose strength. Like, it happened to Nico, like in Battle of the Labyrinth, where when he was summoning the army of the dead, he could only do that for so long before his strength gives out. And the same thing happens to Percy. And Kronos tells him, I knew that you were gonna come here and blow this ship up. And as they're talking, Ethan Nakamura, told you to remember him from the last book. He was very important. He said, well, he doesn't drag in Charles, but he says to Kronos that I found him. And Cronus is like, well, okay, where is he? Supposedly in the engine room. It's really funny because it's like this back and forth relationship where Ethan knows for a fact he has not checked. He's just heard from somebody else that they found Charles, and then eventually Charles gets dragged in by another monster, and you know, he's pulled up this elaborate scheme where he's going to trick them into purposely catching him. And they opened his bag, and in his bag there wasn't really anything. But nobody bothered to check the engine room where all the explosives. Oh my god. I'm so sorry, guys. Honestly, that cough just comes out of nowhere. Sometimes it's fine, and sometimes it's not. And I just don't want my coughing to be on the recording, but I think I might have just broken that. Oh well, let's carry on. So where did I get to? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the engine room. And Kronos reveals to Percy that there's a spy at camp. So one of the campers is keeping Kronos well informed about what's going on there. That's why he's able to create these attacks that actually work. And the monster that is strangling Charles, basically we know that he's gonna die. That is ultimately what it is. And he says to Percy, "You get out of here." And he's got this watch on, which with the timer of the explosives on it, and he literally just presses it, and the ship blows up, and Percy jumps into the sea. Obviously, Percy's safe in the sea, but the rest of the army goes kaboom. Is the only nice word I can think of right now. And then chapter 2 is I meet some fishy relatives. So it opens with Percy having a dream that he's in the Titan's palace, and he sees Atlas, who is Lord Kronos' senior commander in war, and there's two other Titans. I think they're his brothers, from what I can believe, from what I can remember. I don't know, and they're just bickering, like as siblings. Oh, why do we have to stay here? Blah blah blah. It's a bit of a funny moment, considering what just happened in the last chapter. I think Rick wanted to open this one with a little bit of humor, which that's what I said. Like I say it all the time, is that Rick is able to create these moments that. Sorry, had to sneeze that time. Rick is able to create these moments where there's lots and lots of tension, but then he also provides you a little bit of comedic relief, which is what I love about the books. I love that. I love that there's an unserious moment in the most serious moments. I love that. And Nico says to him, like, look, we can't beat Kronos without a plan, so we better come up with something good, basically. And I think Nico already has a plan at this point, but we'll get onto that plan later on. Sorry, a little cough there. Anyway, let's carry on. So what were we talking about? Oh yeah. So then the chapter moves on to Percy going into the sea, and Tyson tells him that, they're in Poseidon's palace, basically. And he finds out that obviously Charles has sacrificed himself to help Percy win this war, basically. Really, really sad moment. Charles is only in the book, I think, for a little while, but he's such a great character. He died a hero's death, basically. Very heroic character. And Percy sees Poseidon, and he all of a sudden looks very like aged and like shriveled, and basically kind of like a shell of what he's supposed to be. Did you see what I did there? I don't think anybody would have found that funny apart from me. Anyway, and then, Poseidon introduces Percy to his wife. Oh dear. Oh dear. His actual wife. The ones who they claim to be married to and then end up having an affair with somebody else, yeah. And, she feels like she's being insulted, so she swims away with her son, Crichton. Yeah, bit of a awkward family reunion. Oh, hi, wife. This is my forbidden kid that I had with a mortal because I didn't want to be. God. Oh no. Anyway, carry on. Poseidon tells him that there's a battle in the ocean. There's a Titan, Oceanus, who's trying to take over Poseidon's realm, basically. And Poseidon's battle isn't going very well. That's why he looks the way that he does. He's reflecting um his ocean, his environment, which I think is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool idea that Rick did there. And Percy sees Briareus, who is in the fourth book again, and he's actually been helping Poseidon defeat Oceanus. And Percy tells his dad about everything that's happened on the ship and stuff, and like, why can't we just sink the ship? Blah blah blah. And obviously, gods can't intervene, so Poseidon can't do that. That's not fair. And Percy tells them that he feels bad about those demigods that he killed on the ship. They're just people who are under the influence of Kronos. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad people. And his father says, there's just nothing you can do. Like in that instance, when somebody's made a wrong decision, there's nothing we can do. And Percy tells his father that I'll stay here and I'll help you win this war under the sea. And he says, no, you need to go back to camp and you need to tell Chiron that it's time that you heard the great prophecy, the whole of the great prophecy. Because at this point, Percy doesn't know the whole prophecy. He knows that a child of the big three is going to make a decision about whether Olympus lives or is destroyed, but he doesn't know the whole prophecy at this point. So yeah, keep an eye on that prophecy. It comes up, and Poseidon sort of asks him, do you still have that sand dollar that I gave you for your birthday? And he sort of says, yeah, I do. Why? And he's like, oh yeah, just keep it, basically. And the chapter ends with Percy leaving because his father has to go to battle. So that's where the chapter sort of starts. So chapter 3 is I get a sneak peek my death. So Percy ends up at camp again, and Connor comes to greet him. So Connor is one of I can't remember which kid he is. I'm really sorry. I genuinely can't remember. And he says, where's Charles? And Percy sort of doesn't say anything, so it's quite obvious that Charles is dead. And Chiron and Annabeth come to see him. There's a little Percybeth moment here, which I really liked. When Percy sees Annabeth, he says this thing, and it's so cute. Honestly, it almost makes me forgive him for. Well, I don't know if he kissed Rachel back or not. I guess I can't. I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know. But the quote is, "My heart did a relay in my chest when I saw her." Oh, it's so cute. It's just so cute. I can't take it, guys. I can't take it. Rachel, stop ruining my show. Sorry, no offense. I just had to put that in there. Anyway, they meet Selena. So if you didn't know, Selena and Charles were a couple, basically. And when she realizes that he's dead, she doesn't really take the news very well. And Clarice comes to comfort her. You see, Clarice isn't all bad. She does have some soft sides to her. Obviously, that's not for Percy. She's like Percy, but for people that she does genuinely like, she's very supportive. This cough is really pissing me off because up until I've sat down to record this, I've been absolutely fine. A bit sniffly, here and there, and a bit of like a cough, but nothing like on this level. Maybe it's because I'm talking a lot. I am drinking water. Before you guys even like shoot me down, I am trying to drink some water, but it's kind of hard when you're bloody choking on it. Anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about Selena, wasn't I? Yeah, and Chiron tells them that they need to call a war council because obviously everything's getting very serious and Kronos' army is coming, so they need a plan, basically. And Percy tells them that there's actually another threat that his father has warned him about, like as well as the Titan attack, something else is coming, basically. And Annabeth goes up to the Oracle and she asks the Oracle for the great prophecy. And this prophecy is in this tiny little leather pouch, and it's around the Oracle's neck. And Annabeth takes it off and she opens it. And Percy's like, what the hell? Like, this entire great prophecy is on a little piece of paper in a leather pouch. But yeah. And then I think it's can't remember if it's Selena or somebody that calls them to say that the War Council is ready. And Clarice and Michael, one of the other counselors, I think he's from the Apollo cabin, from what I can remember, although I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that. And they're squabbling over a chariot, basically. But that chariot is very important because it's going to come up later on in the book. So the great prophecy is read out by Percy, who's struggling to read it out because obviously he's got ADHD and dyslexia, so he's finding it really difficult. But I've written the whole prophecy out, so I'll read it to you guys in case you haven't read the book. So it's a half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds, and see the world in endless sleep. Hero's soul, cursed blade shall reap. A single choice shall end his days, Olympus to preserve or raise. Now, when I read that prophecy for the first time, it is quite a deep prophecy. But actually, no, I can't say that right now. I'll have to talk about that later on. I can't spoil it from now. And Annabeth says to Percy that you're not gonna die. Like you're gonna be okay. She's trying to reassure him. I don't think it's going very well, basically. And Connor tells them that they need to know who that spy is, and obviously, they know that it's going to be a silver necklace with Kronos' scythe on it, basically, a pendant with Kronos' scythe on it. And Percy says, like, regardless of who the spy is, like, we can't waste time doing that. Like, right now, we need to concentrate on this big war that's coming, which is true. Like, I know that obviously finding the spy would be the bright idea. It would stop Kronos' army from knowing what's going on. Sorry about that. You just had to hear me cough for a second there. And they use an iris message to see that the threat that obviously Poseidon has warned them about is actually Typhon. And they find out that the gods have been fighting to stop him from reaching Olympus. So basically, what Kronos has done is he's trying to distract the gods with Typhon, so to pull them away from Olympus so that he can attack Olympus while it's weakest, basically. And Percy tells them that Kronos has something else planned, and the War Council is dismissed, and that's where the chapter ends. So chapter 4 is we burn a metal shroud. So it opens with Percy having a dream about Rachel and that she's throwing darts at his face in the dream. He bloody deserves it, can I just say? But then so does she, because she's basically setting herself up in this point for her. It's like she knows, mate, he's not gonna feel the same way. Like he might like her a little bit, but like nothing compared to what he feels for Annabeth. So that might be a bit of a hard pill to swallow. And Rachel tells her dad that Percy isn't coming on the family vacation with them. And her dad asks her, are you still having these weird, like, nightmares? And they basically get into an argument about her not going to finishing school. Like, she doesn't want to go to this pretentious school because it's not what she wants in life. And Percy notices that she has a painting of Luke and the Empire State Building with the army surrounding it. Now, that's a very important detail because it's almost like Rachel can already see what's about to happen. And that is weird because Rachel is supposed to be immortal. Yes, she's a seer, a human who can see through the mist, but she shouldn't be able to see what's about to happen. Like, that's not even Sally can do that. So that's sorry. Sorry about that, guys. You're having to hear me cough. What was I talking about? Yeah, I was talking about Rachel. So yeah, she shouldn't be able to see all that. It's almost like she can see the future. Now that is very clever of Rick to stick that in there. Oh god. Sorry, what was I saying? I was talking about Rick. Yeah. So I said that's very clever because he's basically planting seeds for something that is going to become very, very important later on in the book. Now, I remember when I read the book for the first time, I don't think I really paid attention to that detail. But when I read it back the second and third time, I was like, yeah, this is very cool. Like, the way Rick has written this is so, honestly, amazing. And, it's Percy and Annabeth's turn for camp inspections, basically. So they're going around the camp and they're inspecting people's cabins. And, he tells her that I haven't heard from Grover since last summer. And that's weird. Like, even like now they have this empathy link. He's like, I don't feel anything. And that's weird. Like, I'm connected to him. Like, that's strange. And even that detail, like, I remember I dismissed that detail, like, when I was reading the book for the first time. But that detail is also very important. And we'll talk more about that when we get there. And, Percy tells Annabeth about his Rachel dream. Dude, why would you bring Rachel up? Like, you know for a fact that Annabeth doesn't like her. Like, to Annabeth, right? Even if Rachel is like on the end of her, like on the end of the line, like Annabeth isn't gonna care. Because why? Why would you? That's almost like saying to the girl that you like, "Oh yeah, I had a dream about this other girl who's crazy about me." Honestly, he's so annoying. Sometimes he's just so annoying. Like I love Percy, don't get me wrong, but like sometimes, especially when he does things like this, I'm like, why do I love you? Like you're so stupid sometimes. Yeah, anyway, she just sort of doesn't really give a reaction. And they start arguing about Rachel. And they're not just arguing about Rachel. I think this Rachel thing is just kind of when you like start a fire, like I think that's what he did. And then they start arguing about the prophecy, and she calls him a coward and storms off, right? Actually, just before she storms off, she says, "Why don't you just go with Rachel?" And then she runs off, right? But as she's doing that, and when she calls him a coward, you know, I think Percy thinks that she's referring to him being a demigod, which doesn't make any sense to him because obviously he's one of the bravest demigods ever. But sorry, I'm so sorry, guys. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Annabeth calling Percy a coward. Now I don't think she was at all referring to him being a demigod. I think she was referring to his not realizing his feelings and being too much of a coward to admit that he likes her. And I think that's what it is. I think that's what Rick meant. But then I see, because I'm an adult, maybe that's why I understand it a little bit more. I don't know, but yeah, I thought it was. I shouldn't like laugh when they're arguing, but I just think it was really funny. It was a nice moment to put in there, like this war, and Rachel is like it's putting rifts in the person that's relationship, which I like, but then also I'm like, yeah, but it's very real. Like that's what I like about Rick's writing. That he doesn't make it unrealistic. Like he doesn't create a perfect relationship where everything is sunshine and rainbows all the time. Like that's not what a relationship is. You go through ups and downs, you argue, you don't it doesn't mean that you don't love each other. It's just you have those rifts for a reason. And it actually makes your bond stronger, I think. And yeah, what they have is perfection. Like honestly, even in the bad moments, like it's just perfection. Anyway, sorry, we're not talking about Percabeth. I have a whole separate episode for Percabeth. We'll go back into that. And as Charles's funeral is taking place, they're all trying to comfort Selena, who's obviously absolutely distraught. She's lost the person that she loves, which I so sad, honestly. And Percy asks Clarice for a favor, but she's still going on about this chariot, and it's like, what the hell, man? Like, do you not have any like sense of what's about to happen? Like, why are you storming off about this chariot? And then she just leaves, basically. So not doing very well in the girls' department this time. So chapter 5 is I drive my dog into a tree. So the chapter opens with Percy riding Mrs. O'Leary, and they've discovered that the forest where the Cloven Councillors and the Cloven Council of elders gather is actually dying. So basically, this war is affecting all aspects, especially nature. And he sees Nico and Juniper both there, and Linus, who's the Lord of the Wild, currently the Lord of the Wild. So I think he's in charge of the Cloven Council as well, from what I can remember. Absolutely hates Grover, and he claims that the war that is coming, so the war with Kronos, isn't the Cloven Council's war to fight, basically. And Percy sort of goes up to him. He really gives him one, which is so funny. Which is so well disturbed. Like, how can you even say that this war isn't your war to fight? Like, you don't think that Kronos would spare the closer council of elders if he wins? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so stupid. Like, it's like, how can you just not? How can you turn your back when people need you? I never understood that. Maybe I'm a little bit like Percy in that sense. Maybe that loyalty is like a very poor thing for me. I don't know. But yeah, Juniper tells Percy, I'm really worried about Grover. Like, I haven't heard from him either. Like, nobody's heard from him, which is so weird because Grover is so attached to his friends. Like, why wouldn't he tell them? And Nico tells Percy that he's spoken to Charles's ghost, and he says that these campers, like, they're no match for Kronos' army. Like, they'll destroy them. And Nico tells Percy that I think you need to become invincible because that's the only way that we're gonna win this war, basically. Now that idea of Percy becoming invincible. Now, if you haven't worked it out what that is, it's the Achilles curse. Now, I understand why Nico thinks it's the only way, but that ultimately puts Percy in a lot of danger. And I don't know how I feel about that necessarily. But Percy says, I agree with you. And that in order to understand the enemy, the only thing that we can do is retrace Luke's steps. So look at what happened in his past that's made him like this, which I think is so clever. Like, I think you can only really know someone if you see where they come from. It explains a lot about people, really. And that's what mental health comes from, right? You look back in that things that have happened in a person's life makes them the way that they are. So it's very, very psychologically clever, this book, I think. And, Nico says that I know where Luke's mom lives. Why don't we go and pay her a visit, basically? And, Nico says that you travel with Mrs. O'Leary. I'll meet you there, basically. And that's where the chapter sort of comes to an end. So let's talk about my final thoughts. So, yeah, like I said in the beginning, I don't like that Rachel kissed Percy, knowing fully well that Annabeth has feelings for him. I think it was very selfish of her. I get that she's shooting her shot, don't get me wrong, but I think you could shoot your shot without forcing your feelings on someone, which is what I think. Charles's death was so sad, and I think he might be. You know how I talk a lot about invisible strings in the books? I think he might be the invisible string in this book because he's constantly being remembered in this book, which I love. And, I love one thing about this book is that in war, people lose the people that they love. That's what war is, right? And I love that Rick is so real. Like, he makes the stakes high. And you really see this book develop from this story about a kid to this boy who's become an adult who is going to lose people that he loves in this war. And Rick is so real for that. Like, there's nothing wrong with what he's done. And, there's this big thing that there can't be like a good ending or like a happy ending without sacrifices. And I think Charles's death was one of the sacrifices. We'll talk about the rest when we get there. And the stakes in this high are the highest they've ever been in the books, which is why I love it. It's so mature. It's grown with the audience. And yeah, I really appreciate that about Rick's writing. I think he is just perfection in a writer. And Percy gets to see Poseidon's palace, which I love. I loved that moment. I'm glad that he got to see it because he's been itching to meet his dad in his natural environment. I had a little tickle there. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so I'm glad that he gets to meet Poseidon's. Well, I wouldn't say his family necessarily, but I'm glad that he got to go under there and see Tyson and things again. I'm glad that the great prophecy is finally revealed. People have been itching to hear that prophecy. Like, I know when I was reading the books for the first time, I wanted to know that entire prophecy because I was just like, they keep talking about it, talking about it, talking about it, and they never give me what I want. So I'm glad that Rick put it in quite early on in the book. There's lots of Perciveth tension in this book. Rachel is a huge tension in that. But I think for Percy, like another thing that's causing a lot of problems is he doesn't know if Annabeth is going to be able to face Luke. I think in the back of his mind, that's what he's thinking about. Like, if we get there, is she going to be strong enough to push her feelings for him aside and do what needs to be done, basically? And I think that causes a lot of friction in their relationship, creates like a rift in their relationship. And that's very, like I said, it's very realistic. Like, that's what happens to people. There is tension in relationships because of certain people or certain things that happen. So I'm glad that Rick has put that in there. And I love that Nico is finally helping Percy. They've gone past this stage where he was blaming Percy for his sister's death, and they're finally working together. Because without working together, they're not going to win this war. And I'm glad that they both know that, which is great. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening in. That is part 1 out of part 5 of the Percy Jackson Last Olympian book. I really enjoyed this book, actually. I really enjoyed reading it back. I'm so sorry you had to listen to me cough and sneeze, and there's times where I just disappeared. I'm so sorry. Like I said, I wasn't too bad before I started recording this, but now all of a sudden it all just wants to come out. Maybe it's because I was talking a lot. I don't know. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening in. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Aamsuntitledpodcast. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I post when podcasts go up, any books that I'm currently reading, that sort of thing on there. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I'm reading a new book at the minute called Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. So if anybody's read it, please let me know what you think. I'm quite early on in it. I haven't really had much time to read. But I think I'm The book's right here. Actually, I can check exactly where I am. I'm on page 48, so I'm not that far into it just yet. But yeah, what I've read so far I really like, so I'm going to carry on reading it. As you can see, my love for Greek mythology is coming out. Yeah, like I said, follow me on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Episodes are available to stream on Spotify as well, if that's what you prefer. And I will see you guys in the next part. Bye.